Okay, Year 12, here's the question on select committees. So I've said that select committees are the most effective means of holding the government to account. That's a statement that you have to analyse and evaluate. Now notice that the knowledge here is going to be based around scrutiny. It's not to do with legislation, it's not to do with representation. It's about how the government is scrutinised. So your knowledge base is going to be around select committees, it's going to be around questions, it's going to be around debate. So if you look at this question, you have to ask yourself at the beginning, what is the debate that they're raising? And the implication of the question is that select committees are the most effective means by which MPs can challenge the government. And you can certainly justify this on the basis of the increased prominence of select committees over time. However, the point of the debate is to discuss the other factors you can talk about, such as prime minister's questions and debate in the chamber. Do they have any advantages? Can they be seen effective at all? Okay. So 3 paragraphs, and you can do this in a range of different ways, but one way to do it would be to take on the different types of scrutiny and kind of consider them in the context of select committee. So the first one is MPs can use questions to challenge the government. This paragraph is broken into 2 parts. What you want to do is you want to sustain the fact that questions are useful. So they provide a range of opportunities for MPs to raise constituency concerns, to hold the minister or the prime minister to the current issues of the day. And also prime minister's questions, as we know, hold a significant media interest, and that can raise wider public interest in a particular topic. So these are all positives in saying why questions are effective. Then you would do it, you split the paragraph, go into the however, talking about the limitations of questions, and they can lack follow-up questions, so they can't really fully investigate a concern. And secondly, you want to talk about the use of party whips, the fact that whips can actually plant questions and try and encourage MPs to follow a party agenda, perhaps meaning that party morale is more relevant than scrutiny. So there are significant limitations of time, which obviously impacts upon the scrutiny, unlike select committees, and that's you drawing it back in your evaluation to the question that's being asked. Second point is to talk about concerns, and again you want to show off your knowledge of the different ways in which debate can raise concerns. And you can see them there: adjournment, emergency, opposition debates, e-petition debates. Good to have examples that sustain them, but what we're trying to get across here is there's a whole range of different ways in which MPs can raise concerns by bringing forward motions, or the opposition can do the same thing, and the government has to be accountable to it. The counterpoint, though, is to talk again about the limitations of debate. The lack of real media interest in most debates that occur, and actually the fact that the chamber is very poorly attended in most situations for debates. Debate motions are rarely passed due to the inbuilt majority of the government, and therefore in terms of real impact and holding the government to account, you have to see the limitations there. So you can say how debate perhaps contrasts the select committees in terms of the media interest that the committee hearings can actually create. Third point is to look at select committees themselves, all right, and therefore justify the assertion in the question. So why are select committees good? Well, we know there's a whole range of reasons, and probably the biggest challenge you're going to face here is trying to be concise while still showing off your range of rationale of why select committees are effective in their job. The time and resources they have, the limitations of power on the party whips, the fact they've got some freedom of choice in terms of what they investigate, and as we know, ministers think ahead to having to be held accountable to the committee in the future. So perhaps a greater challenge is found within the select committee. You must still show balance, and therefore the other side of this paragraph is going to be talking about the limitations of not the report being ignored, the fact that they can be seen as watchdogs without teeth. The scrutiny that has been brought forward is being questioned in terms of the fact that sometimes they seek media interest by the choice of celebrity hearings rather than true scrutiny. And if you're realistic about it, the time and resources are still quite limited. So despite the MPs becoming more expert in these particular areas, there are still limitations on how well they can really challenge the government machine. So we get to our conclusion. You probably would conclude that the select committees are probably the most effective method of holding the government to account. Important in the conclusion, of course, to acknowledge the other side of the argument, the fact that there are a range of opportunities, but these really lack depth of scrutiny. And therefore we want to prioritise in the final part of your paragraph the point that really makes the reason why the select committees are most effective. And it should be the independence they hold, the permanent position, and therefore they ally a most effective challenge to government. Hopefully that makes sense. Any questions, just ask. Thanks.